Right then, apologies, the video cut out. So, materiality in knitting, once again. What we're seeing is there's an entirely different set of materials, have a different set of things that you can knit with them, and they carry a different prestige. So this alpaca here that's looking rather sheepish will eventually become something like this, or there will at least. This is a scheme that I bought from iKnit in London, and it sort of represents the wider movement towards more stripped down aesthetics in the craft world. You know, you can't actually knit from a scheme, but it's done to showcase all of the work that's gone into it, the process that has gone into it. Try knitting from that, you know, it's been a big fat mess and a big tangle. It's something we're seeing a lot more with the craft movement in general. It's a stripping back. Also, materiality is becoming far more politicised in the knit world. People like Freddie Robbins doing this kind of work and using its form, and hopefully as well eroding away the boundary that lies between art and craft. And you know, saying the craft methods can be used artistically, and that's cool. Then we do this with embodiment. Knitting has this way of making slightly more permanently embodied action the process that you're doing. So here, this is a piece that I'm making based on the tube line. It would eventually be a scarf, but using dolly knitting you only make a thin tube. So I'm making one for each line and then sewing them together. And I'm only knitting them actually on the line itself. So this was knitted on the Piccadilly line, it is actually cut blue. And I believe that this is a drop stitch here that has been dropped somewhere between Leicester Square and Piccadilly. It's very difficult to drop a stitch when you're doing this kind of knitting. You only have to look at 4 stitches at once. And you feel them get dropped, and you see them get dropped, and it all looks horribly wrong. So this is most likely a result of being jostled around. Not only does it represent my embodied interaction with things, with the materials, but it also represents the bodies that were around me at the time of knitting. Similarly, this here is again a mistake. From early on in the process, I dropped 5 stitches in. And to make this pattern, you basically have to do one line of knit and one line of purl. And I picked it up in the wrong place after having panicked and fretted my way to picking these stitches back up again. I'm proud of the fact there's no hole, but this, I found this part of the problem with this linear way of learning, is that you only train your hands to do one thing at a time, which is great, you know, to do them, but when a problem comes up and when you're doing it alone, you often don't know how to solve it, and I had to break that linear narrative of learning in an effort to try and fix it. I still haven't picked it up in the wrong place. Now we look more to things like socialities. Craft has been theorised as a sort of one of 2 things. Some see it as quite a social activity, be that with the materials or with peers, whereas others see it as the sort of isolation, working with the material, just you and the material. And yeah, it's almost a very antisocial thing sometimes, particularly when you look at things like watchmaking and things like that. But what we're seeing now particularly is a movement towards people meeting to knit, which is fascinating in terms of the socialities that it brings with it. And paralleling that is the socialities that now exist online. So these are all taken from Reddit, from the sort of more standard forums, which are the knitted, which is kind of like a notice board for all the news, and knitting updates and free patterns, this kind of stuff. Knit request, where you ask for things to be knitted for you and you pay for them, and somebody sends it you, which is great. And then to the more sort of niche kind of things, such as kitting, which, as it says, safe space for you to unload all of your cat knitting related experiences. We accept cats and knitting of all kinds on here. The majority of it is actually knitting for cats, not cats in general, and stuff like that. So yeah, marketing towards that niche kind of sociality as well, where communities can form around interests, sub-interests through knitting. I think it's something really exciting in that. Now we look to the work by David Gauntlet, presently making is connecting. He proposed that by making things, we're making connections constantly, not only within the world of the thing we're making, but between ourselves and the material world, and ourselves and others. He argues that this is part of a wider movement away from this sort of sit back and be told culture towards a more making and doing culture, largely propagated by the internet, and something that he sees as really important to our success as a society moving into the future. Check if the camera's still going. Yeah. Whimsical politics and identity politics. So Joanna Mann foresees this as being part of political politics. In her words, the capricious and fanciful capricious and fanciful materials and processes used here are capable of real political impact, and that's really important. It's kind of cool. His identity pieces is also used for artistic expression, thanks to freedom of form and permits you and things like that. More overtly, it's used politically by groups such as Knitting Nanas against gas, who use knitted works to actively protest. Another way to think about the identity that comes with knitting is to look at the standard cliche of the knitwear model. This is no normal knitwear model, Roger Moore. But as you can see, it's sort of sporting a very well-fitting cardigan in both examples. Whereas if you look at the more modern examples, what we see is intentional over-length here, this kind of shagginess and unironedness and looseness that goes with the modern aesthetic of what knitwear means for many people, and what that identity is. I think that's really cool as well. Knitting is gendered. Historically, as we've discussed, it's been thought of as very gendered. However, we're seeing things that come against this, both in the contemporary and more historically as well. So Ryan Gosling very recently said that his perfect day would be spent knitting, and the internet responded in fitting style with a series of memes. Go check them out, they're great. But also historically, this chap here was a prisoner of war who knitted this. Prisoners of war would get beneficial treatment because they could knit things for their occupiers, jumpers to keep them warm, things like this, and they would receive better treatment for that. Also sailors. But when you think about it, society might say it's a bit strange to see these big burly sailors knitting. But sailing and knitting kind of go hand in hand. This ability to tie knots into these coherent fabrics, turning one straight thing into a material, I think is quite interesting, the parallel that's drawn. Knitting in the city, what we see are knitting items that are becoming infused with urban themes, be that how to knit a telephone box, or how to knit a pigeon, or something like this. A lot of work being done by this person here. This is her logo, it's Deadly Knit Shade, who has a blog as well. And also this has been reflected in academic work, this urban infusion with knitting, more predominantly on yarn bombing. Laura Price, who did great work here at Holloway, who I wonderfully got a chance to work with in my second year. And this is an absolutely wonderful paper on yarn bombing and knitting in the city. Just checking again. Yeah! Methods. So, one of the predominant methods being used will be ethnography. Participant observation will make up a large part of that, particularly in the latter two sites, so in the shops and in the stitch and bitch sessions. In-process interviews will be used. So that is a method of trying to get people to talk through what they're doing as they're doing it. Sometimes when we look at things retrospectively, things get lost or accidentally missed out or become more difficult to describe. And this tying of the material and embodied interaction with the vocalising of what is happening, I'm hoping will provide quite interesting results. Semi-structured interviews, I'm sticking to semi-structured interviews because I really want to be enlightened what these people have to say. And I don't want to be closing the door and bringing in tight boundaries on the project and on what they're saying, particularly in the early stages. I'm sure it will be impressively informative and open my eyes further. Digital ethnography will also be used to stay in touch with digital socialities and digital sites that are occurring. And that again will be using things like ethnographic diaries, but also digital forums. So I've set up an Instagram for this, I've set up a blog, and I will be interacting with other people's blogs and other people's social media through them. Also ethnography, I will be myself learning to knit from this magazine, Simple Stylish Knitting, and I'll be using photo and video to record that visually alongside scratch notes, which will then be written up into ethnographic diary form. Scratch notes being used in particular because they allow me to just liberate my hands for a small amount of time, take a note, and then expand on them later. The other benefits are that it will allow me to learn the jargon and the lexis that is surrounding knitting, which is critical to understanding its world. There's plenty of it, And as well, it will allow me to begin to understand material interaction more fully myself. Artistic methods are something that I'm hoping, it'll probably be a lot smaller part of the methodology, but I'm hoping to bring out, particularly in the later stages. These two here are works by Helen Scalway, Submariner's Cell and Textile Shop, which take these more abstract imaginations of space and spatial factors, and then overlay more place-based relationships onto them. And I think there's this beautiful juxtaposition, this beautiful tension that you can pull out of these kind of things. I'm hoping to apply that not only to the knitting shop, but also to hopefully some of the online sites as well. I'm currently in conversation with Helen, and I'm going to have to figure out how that's going to happen and whether it is possible. But it's exciting anyway. Other artistic methods are more of artistic pieces of Casey Jones, Casting Off My Wound, again with Freddie Robbins. But these are things, as not qualified artist, I feel I might not be able to make, and this is why I'm choosing to work very closely with Helen here, where she'll allow me, is to try and bring that artist's image into it, not try and make these statements of myself as an artist that I can't really justify. Just some concluding thoughts and predictions. This is roughly how I see it going. So this is where they will interact with each. The magazine and online, I'm hoping, will interact mainly with the embodiment and materiality theme. Similarly, sociality with knitting shops, and identity politics with Stitch and Bitch. That's not to say that these will be forgotten about. I'll be taking a holistic view wherever possible. And I think they all have an important role to play in this kind of melting pot of ideas. These are the ones I envisage as leading the way. And then just some final concluding thoughts and sort of summation by bringing together the various facets of contemporary knitting and seeing through various themes. I'm hoping that will bring out a lot of the field, and obviously methods will be ethnographic and auto-ethnographic primarily, but working artistically as well where possible. There's also some project media, so there's a blog, Pearls of Wisdom, where we talk about